So here we are. We've just launched Dashboard. You do need Dashboard, preferably 8.1, which is the current released version as of August. What we're going to see here is when we launch our dashboard, we'll be able to find the device. It does have SLP, so you'll find it under the default IP address. In this case, we have one that we're going to be using that we have changed the IP address on, and we'll get into that in a little bit when we get further along. Now, when you open up the tree on the left-hand side, you can see here. So I opened up the tree. Now I can see all of my nodes within the Carbonite. Now, just like standard Carbonite, you can jump straight into a status menu or a configuration menu or a live assist menu and bring those items up. The new one is the panel node. So by clicking on the panel node, what you see it brings up, and for the panel to run properly, you need a monitor that is running at least 1920 by 1080. Now in this case, I'm running a monitor that's 2560 by 1400. So I actually will have an oversized layout in my case. Now, what happens when we launch it is it comes up with basically what we're seeing here, which is this is the virtual soft panel. So this allows me to control my frame only and or my all-in-one Carbonite Solo, because you can have multiple connections controlling that surface. And under the multi-panel rules, you can have hard panels and physical panels with different bus maps and configurations. And then we have a slot for the virtual panels. If I launch multiple clients with virtual panels, you get the same user slot, so to speak. So when we launch our panel, we get our three sections. We have our main menu system on the left that mimics the panel menu system on an actual Carbonite Solo or Carbonite Black panel. So having the ability to emulate those exact same menus, making it easy to walk through or control in the same manner as a real life Carbonite. So if I hit menu, having the mnemonics that follow along, so I can go into the system menu and basically control things the same way I would from the physical control surface. You have your delegation for the lower delegation section here. So the idea being the menu will always stay up. But essentially I can delegate what the row is controlling, mini ME, ME, or if a key bus row is delegated to an aux, so I can pick any of the aux buses to delegate to, as well as go back and reassign it to a key or row. There's even a positioner menu if you want to have a dedicated positioner. So you can click on move, button emulates the button that would be on top of the joystick, and then we have a slider here for the Z axis. Basically, it's hard to do a rotating knob on this product. All right, so the bottom of the screen is my buses. Obviously, my delegation row bus for keys, auxes. I have my program bus for the ME or mini ME or multi-screen that I'm controlling. And then at the bottom, I have my preset bus for that ME. You have a next trans area, so it works very much like a real next trans area, only because again, it's a touch interface device or a keyboard and mouse. The next trans area, you don't have to hold buttons. You can toggle them on and off. Your transition type, your roll clip enabled type button, and then even your dissolve wipe DVE or media wipe transition, followed by cut and auto trans. And of course, if panel link is enabled in your menu system, then obviously the effects are going to follow along as well. Dedicated keyer, cut and auto trans buttons with mnemonics, letting you see what source is currently assigned to those keyers, and even a menu bar that you can choose to drag and drop or click as you need. Because we do have some elements that involve a hold or multiple press element, for example, if I wanted to toggle the shift, here we do know that because I'm toggling a shift, it is going to latch it. But if I, for example, wanted to hold down the white button so that I could hit the trans reset button, obviously that doesn't work. So what I can do is enable, say, a 2-press mode, which will toggle hold, hit 1, and then it releases and turns the hold off. The other option is to just have hold on, in which case, even after I say go to dissolve and reset the trans, you'll notice the hold mode is still reserved. And I would have to manually turn the hold off. So that's your method for doing soft holds pretty quickly. There is the option to select a different panel than the soft panel to mimic different panel types. But essentially this is the control surface that you'll want to use because this leverages the physical surface plus your dashboard display all in one monitor, hence the need for 1920 by 1080. Now that I understand my 3 regions, one of the things that we always did before when we're using something as a standalone dashboard to maximize screen was we'd click on menu and you would click on full screen mode. And so full screen mode will take us into the full screen and it'll make sure to maximize that screen real estate. And undoing full screen will achieve the exact same thing as well. Here, because my monitor is so large, I can leave this open and bounce back and forth. What's nice is you control this just like you would a standalone dashboard instance. So I can hit menu and I can navigate to any of my control menus without navigating away from this this look. So again, running this on a touchscreen device makes it nice and fluid and simple. So you have your default elements, and you'll notice we've got our status menu, our configuration menu, our live assist, our custom control shop box and control menu, and our media manager. So with our status menu, we still have our software version, our serial number, our engine type, because again, numerous engines. In this case, it's a Carbonite Solo engine, the CBF 109. Our video mode that we're operating in, our current reference source, our external reference if applicable, our field dominance, our ancillary mode, temperature range, temperatures of each, and then whether or not the fans are active. Now this is running on top of a desk and actually doesn't have any fans at all in it. And with no timecode connected through an optional serial timecode adapter, they're not available. Allocated DVEs. So this is an addition we added in the Carbonite series where using the status page you can see where your DVEs are being allocated. So if we were to come to the ME key area and let's say for example we took key 1 and we make it into a DVE key. So we go ahead and jump to our live assist menu. So and we said okay, we're gonna enable the DVE on this key, ME key 1, right? So there's my X, Y, Z. So I can go ahead and I can adjust that size. We can move it around even using the joystick, but of course a lot easier just to use the element inside of here, plus you've got the there. You can click on it and also dial in your exact position that you want as well. So the key of this was by turning on a DVE. When we look at the status menu, you can see where we've applied DVE channels to. We've got ME1, key 1, and DVE channel 1. And we've got 2 DVE channels currently applied because when we look at the key type, so if we go to our configuration, or sorry, our live assist, right, key 1 was doing an auto key. Had we just been doing the DVE key type, then we're applying it just to the DVE, not the menu key. we come in to status, and now you'll see only one channel is being applied. All right, so the status menu is pretty straightforward, easy to use, no issues there. Let's move on to configuration menu. Okay, so in our configuration menu, this is where we can configure a lot of the elements, and this is the same information that I would find in any Carbonite, not just in the Carbonite Solo, only a little bit less since Carbonite Solo is a single ME switcher. This also applies for setting up a Carbonite all-in-one, because this menu screen, when we look at it, allows us to emulate the on-panel menu system as well. So being able to reference how I would do it via the on system panel if I'm not running dashboard, we can also accommodate. All right, so on the system menu, this is where we'll find our field dominance, our ancillary mode settings, our clean feed setting, and our layer mode setting. So if we were to come into the system menu, we'd be able to modify our clean feed. Now on a switcher that has more than one ME, pushing the knob, so because again this is dashboard, we've separated, and instead of having a knob that turns with a push button for select, we've created a select button, as well as simulated a knob for up and down by using buttons, a little bit easier than a knob that you have to put your finger on. So obviously turning the knob, I can set my clean feed position, so where before which key or the clean feed is. So here I would see keys 1, 2, and 3. If we put it at key 3, I would see keys 1 and 2 on my clean feed, but not 3 and 4. So essentially picking where in the tap it's pulling out from. Multi-viewer, this is where you can come in to configure the multi-viewer. We have a separate menu for that over here. So if we, when we go to look at that, we'll make sure to incorporate this into the video. So for right now, let's focus on the system menu. So your next option is your ancillary mode. So on my menu display of the panel, I'd click next, and you'd see our field switch for field dominance. So field 1, field 2, or both, as well as you've got your different ancillary data. Note that anything with a strip is going to strip all of your VANC data, and that includes the horizontal data, which is where embedded audio is passed. Note frame syncs will strip embedded audio, so that is something to look into if you're wondering why the embedded audio isn't coming out program or on an aux bus. Make sure that source is not in a frame sync, because you will lose that audio. Long and no pass, end pass, the end versions will maintain all of the active video space, whereas the L versions will strip the first few lines of active video. In SD, this is where a lot of the extra data as well as closed captioning was. It was actually in the active video space, so this is a means to close it out. Next up is layer mode. Now, layer mode is also found in the menu system, and layer mode, you can take the ME and you can use it as a compositing tool, which will output for you a video element over black, so it puts black on the background essentially, and then it gives you the means to, on the clean feed output, instead of outputting a clean feed, this is going to output for you your composited alpha of all of your keyers, as well as your composited video, but with a black background, thus allowing you to put it into another device to key that over top of whatever you'd like. Good for recording for later, good for recording to ISO so that you can do it in post and apply a different background. Also useful if, say, you wanted to put a 2 box over 2 different backgrounds, I could use layer mode to composite the 2 boxes and maybe a lower third as well, and then use the mini MEs to key that on top of whatever background it is that would be different between the two. So that's kind of what layer mode's for. Again, on larger ME systems with more physical MEs, layer mode becomes very useful because you use that and re-enter it into another ME. However, we're not going to limit the Carbonite switchers, especially the Carbonite solos. We're not going to limit those and remove layer mode just because it's not always used by that many. So that's your system menu from inside of here in the dashboard section. What you'll notice from the system menu on the physical panel, so if I'm looking at a physical panel, it'll have this type of layout, is on the first page you have your clean feed settings and you have your multi-viewer settings. So if I go into my multi-viewer setting, this is where I can pick my physical multi-viewer, and again, if I have a different Carbonite switcher, there's multiple multi-viewers. Then you have your layout, so you can pick your different layout combination that you want to run. You have your transparency for your labels, for the background of the labels. Then you've got your overlay, is your overlay source on. We use this for when we're doing view control, so that an input will supply us with the view control output. The view control output, if we jump to it really quick, will look something like this as it builds, because it's got to pull the data in over the network, and of course I'm running USB. Now obviously, because my screen is right now much larger, view control is bigger than what it would be, but the system's running at 1920 by 1080. I would output this on a HDMI output as 1920 by 1080, and in the multi-viewer these sections would actually key over and key through to the video below in the multi-viewer. And now you would take the HDMI output out of your Carbonite Solo, plug that into a touchscreen, and plug the touchscreen's USB back into the computer that's generating this dashboard UI. And now you have access to controlling and seeing the video in the multi-viewer and just literally touching the source that you would want. And by pressing that source, it would take it and put it to air. You've got keyer control as well, and you've even got tabs, which all the tabs are nameable, and then you can assign icons and names and a function to these buttons. So by clicking on my little widget, it would bring up my editing for view control. So I pick a button, I can rename the group, I can give the button a name, and I can go ahead and say I want custom control 1, macro 1 to be run, and then you can use your the default icon, or you can look inside of your USB that you may have plugged in, and if you have an image or a capture, you can apply that to the icon. Of course, if you want, you can always default the icon, it'll go back to the ROS icon. Now, these images store with the switcher show file. So when you save this, the images that you used will store with your show file. And then that way, if you delete them, if it was a capture, or if you pull the USB out for whatever reason to swap it or do something else, you don't have to worry about this particular image disappearing. It'll always be with your show setup file. So when you load your show, loads it in, and then it serves it up to dashboard. None of this data is being stored in dashboard. We have other videos on view control, and I highly recommend you look at view control. This is just a quick overview of how to connect and set up a Carbonite Solo from the start to get an overview and a feeling of it. Okay, so view control, it's neat. We can cover it in greater detail in another segment. All right, back to getting ourselves familiar with our new Carbonite and what's in each menu and how to configure things. So the other thing inside of the multi-viewer menu, right, is then you're able to pick how you want your labels to display on the multi-viewer, and frame syncs, whether or not we put that in the label, editing the clock value, and then editing each individual box. What source is in it, what the border is it black, white, or off, aspect markers, are they on or off, where do you want your label, is the green tally off or on, is the red tally off or on, multi-screen markers, are they on. So as you can see, there's a lot of options. It still can be set up from the physical panel surface, as you can see here from the panel menu emulator. But there is a dedicated page in the dashboard GUI. So if we go to multi-viewers in our dashboard UI, you'll see that it's a lot easier and more visual. Again, if I had multiple multi-viewers, so not Carbonite Solo, you would have additional buttons for each multi-viewer. So I pick my multi-viewer. In this case, we only have one multi-viewer with Carbonite Solo. We click on the layout, and now I get a visual representation of all my pre-configured layouts, including view control like we had seen before. So view control, and now you have again a visual representation of what that multi-viewer is going to look like. So if we go to our, say, 244, so now I can see box 1 has preview in it, box 2 has program in it, and on the left hand side are our system-wide functional elements. So meaning the FrameSync label, whether it's on or off for inputs, this is a for the entire multi-viewer. So any box with this enabled, any box that has a source that has a FrameSync on, next in the name, it'll show you that the FrameSync is enabled for that source. Tally. There are 3 modes for the tally. Box tally is going to put the tally around the outside and creating a border, and this will consume a few pixels. Now label tally will put it where the label is. If the label's on the bottom, then on the left and right bottom corners you will see green and red lights. Green on the left, red on the right. Red for program, green for preview. If you work in an environment where you might be the other way around, meaning program is on the left, preview is on the right, then what you can do there is say, no, we want label reverse. So we want to see red on the left, green on the right. And again, that's a system activation, so every box will look the same with these things. You have the ability to apply a clock, so you can pick where you want your clock to be positioned, and as you position it, it will be rendered in real time. Double click on the label, it will default to the default location, and then we could say, let's make it 12% in size, so you can see you have control. You have control of the foreground color, and you have control of the background color with some presets. In your mode, you can take from system time or from external timecode if you have a timecode adapter to serial port. You can have whether or not the frame count from timecode is shown. And in system, we can go ahead and either run as a 24-hour time clock, a 12-hour time clock, or even a 12-hour with AM and PM markers. So again, a lot more flexibility in your clock that you're putting up on your multi-viewer. Now there's one more setting, two more settings. Transparency, this is for the label. So this will alter the label in your multi-viewer, and that's putting a transparent background. So, and it'll go the full length of the multi-viewer. And this can be seen in the other multi-viewer configuration menus, as this applies just like on a regular Carbonite. Now, if we go back to one of our view control layouts, you'll notice now we get our overlay. So by clicking on the overlay menu, you can enable or disable the overlay, pick the source you want, and then you can set your clip and gain value. Your default's about 6.26, so this will clip off the heavy blacks and allow you to key through. If, depending on well, in this case we're using the HDMI input, so this will be fine. But if I was using an SDI input and it was an HDMI to SDMI converter that did that, so HDMI to SDI, Some of those converters, we've seen some that do some stuff and you require to go a little bit higher into the blacks. Not a big deal because black is behind. So if you have to, you just need to run your clip up a little bit higher and you'll be able to see this on the output. All right, so let's go back to this multi-viewer configuration. So when you call up a box, what you'll notice right away is you get all these different settings. So green and red tally. Now program, I want to turn off my tally markers because it's always programmed. So I don't need green and red tally to be enabled. Border. Now right now it's going to be adding a few pixels of white border to give it separation. I can make it a black border and I can make it off so that it doesn't creep in on my video. Next up is your label. Is the label even on? You can have it to not even bother putting up text. Maybe we know the right is program, left is preview, it always is. So you know what, turn off the label so that it doesn't obstruct my view of the graphics and anything else that might be present and covered by even some of the program label. Position. So your label position, is it top or is it bottom? So is it at the bottom of the screen or does it move to the top of the window? Aspect, is it on or off? So aspect, this will give you markers showing you 4:3 safe zone markers when operating in a 1920 by 1080 or in any 16:9, whether it's 720p or 1080, it would show you the 4:3 safe zone marker. Your multi-screen marker works similarly in that it's going to put up a window marker to show you what your safe area is depending on your configuration of multi-screen. Whether you're too wide or too high, it'll show you where the video currently is being cropped or positioned, because you can even pick where in the raster in multi-screen you're looking. So this will give you a safe zone marker for that as well. And you can do this on a box per box basis. All this information is individually selectable per box, and as you can see, you can put any source into any box. So for those asking, I don't understand, why is there 16 aux buses? Well, the thought was that I may want to use aux buses for my multi-viewer. Because it will auto follow, what I could do, for instance, is make these 8 aux buses. So I could use aux 9, aux 10, aux 11, aux 12, for example. And now on my switcher, if I was using aux 9, and now when I switch that source, now input 4 would be what is viewed inside of that box. So this is a way for you to leverage your virtual aux buses as a means to output and choose and select with memories, with effects, what sources are dynamically routed into these monitors, as well as for cases where I may have an actual aux bus that's feeding an onset monitor or something. I can monitor what's going out at all times and it'll let me know. So that's your multi-viewer information, and again from the physical hard panel, that's coming from menu, system, multi-viewer. On the next page we had our ancillary and our switching, which again those were all under the system menu in dashboard. Then we've got some diagnostic tests. So on the switcher for diagnostics, in dashboard we've got copy logs to USB as well as log direct to USB. So if I enable this, it'll just continually write the logs directly to USB, as opposed to relying on me hitting the copy button to actually copy them from memory space into the USB. Now from the panel, when we go into this copy logs, we can do our RAM test, tally test, GPI test, GPO test, and of course logging to USB, yes or no. Now on the full panel, we've also got our display test, where it's going to go in and it's going to do cross-point tests and display tests, and you've got extra elements that obviously we are going to hide from the soft UI. Since it's not a real panel, the buttons are always going to be good. So frame IP address, This is the IP address that the frame is running on. So again, and if it's a panel, it's an all-in-one, so it's the IP address of the system. But here, we can come in and we can edit and modify this IP address. Well, on the panel, quickly go in to be able to change your IP. Maybe because of your networking, it's a little bit difficult to figure out where it is, and instead of directly connecting your Carbonite Solo all-in-one directly to the computer to get it sorted out and assigned an IP address that works in your IT scheme, from the physical panel you can come in and you can edit it. So if I clicked on edit, now I can use this knob to cycle between the address fields, and then I would use this knob to change the actual IP address. And then we've got mask, gateway. So this knob is toggling between our mask and our gateway settings, right? And even your mode. So being able to state that I want the mode to be static or DHCP. So as you can see from the menu panel, the physical panel, it's very easy to edit these values, get them set up and configured. However, obviously if you already are connected via dashboard and now you just need to change it assign it the IP address you need it to be, or change it for whatever reason, I mean, it is a lot easier just to come to the network tab where you can name it, and that's how it'll show up inside of dashboard when people auto discover it. DC Solo is because Dave Carter, who writes all of our manuals, does fantastic work. I'm borrowing the one that's currently on his desk that he's using to do this video. That's the wonders of dashboard. Just connect to somebody's machine and start using it. So I would just come in here and you'll see none of this is editable because we're displaying it. We click on the edit button, it'll bring up the information. You can switch between DHCP or static, and then you can enter the IP address, the mask, and the gateway. When you update it, it will reconfigure the device and reboot with that IP address. Okay, so pretty straightforward on IP address and what it does and where to find it in both this menu as well as this menu. Now for device configuration, currently we do come to this portion of the panel, whether it's a physical panel or it is a virtual panel, and we'll use this to currently set up our devices. Now as you can see, we've already got our LTC device set up on our serial port. So if I want to add a new IP device, since none have been added, I simply click on Add New. So now it's going to jump in. I get to pick my slot number. So this is a virtual device slot. You can have up to 64 of them, plus the serial port. Now I pick my device type. So camera, router panel, audio mixer, aux panel, raw stock device, serial tally device, P-bus device. So we got a lot of devices that we can talk to. So let's go with a raw stock device, like we were going to talk to a expression. You'll see the next button is lit up, so we would click on next. Subtype is expression. That's the only subtype, though we can use this to talk to other switchers and other elements as well, using a couple of commands that are shared between our different devices. You would enter the IP address for it, the port number that it's running on, and then you've got your extra options. Now, for more detail on what these options do and how they work, we do have other specific tutorials on setting up and controlling those different devices. So I highly recommend you watch that video because it's going to show you how to connect both ends of the device, how to set it up, how to run it, and also how to even use custom control macros for controlling these devices as well. And again, because these are Carbonites, whether it's a Solo or it's a full version, I shouldn't say full version, whether it's a Solo all-in-one or a separate frame Solo, we still talk to these devices from Carbonite. So have a look at those videos for specifics on the devices. We're just showing kind of where the menu is. Once we're done, click select and confirm. So now you've gone and we have now created this expression device. And right now I see nothing because nothing has been associated with it. So when we get into the input configuration and linking, right, this is where on inputs we're going to find device, select, pick that device, and hit select and confirm. So now, right, when we go to that system menu, next, device, you'll see it's assigned to input 1. And of course, we update it there. It updates inside here as well. And we can use this scroll to scroll over to see all the things that are assigned to that device for cross points. So our device menu, pretty straightforward, easy to use. Embedded trigger configuration. So this is for embedding triggers into the VANC data for sending to other switchers to be triggered based on VANC data. There's a separate documentation on embedded triggers, how they work, and how to configure and set it up. It uses VANC insertion of DID and nested. Live EDL config, again for setting up live EDL using the LTC device and also being able to use GPIs to trigger records and recording edit decision list files so that your, say, music show, as you do your cuts and dissolves and all that, will be stored to a file that you can then load into your editing platform that would allow you to take the ISO recordings you did on other devices, getting that same time code, and be able to link those and recreate your EDL file. We currently don't have a video on that, but one will be in the works. Output configuration. So your output configuration, this is for setting up your outputs. So we've already got an outputs tab for that. So on my outputs config, you can see there are 5 SDI outputs and 1 HDMI output. And you also have an AES audio output. For the AES audio output, this is for MediaStore audio playback, either from MediaStore 1, MediaStore 2, or having it follow with whatever ME1's media wipe transition element is doing. So this will automatically assign the audio channel to track along with whatever you're doing in media wipes. That way, if you're using different channels and flip-flopping, you won't have to come in and manually change the audio. It'll automatically route it based on what channel you're using. For your physical outputs, this is where you can come in and you can assign any physical source to go directly out and output, any internal source, including background, color black, media stores 1 through 4, and any of the buses in the switcher, program preview clean, and as well as aux bus 1 through 16, and your mini MEs as well, because don't forget there are 2 mini MEs with their own background program preset buses and key layers for doing additional keying on outputs separate from your main ME, or doing multi-screen and driving screens. So each output can be configured. One thing to note is output 5 in HDMI 1 add the addition of being able to output the multi-viewer. So being able to come in and you'll see that you can pick multi-viewer only on output 5 and HDMI 1. Now the HDMI output also has the ability to set up, is it actually connecting to an HDMI device or to a DVI device? Is that device prefer YUV color space or RGB color space? Now normally these will auto-negotiate and tell us, but for some devices that don't properly auto-negotiate, this allows you to override and force it so that you'll get the correct viewing on that HDMI output. So I could have gone into my output config and had the exact same type of menu, right? And then again, the same type of options inside of here, whereby I can pick DVI or HDMI R or HDMI Y. So pretty straightforward, as well as picking from my sources. And then my AES output, assigning it. So again, much easier to do right from inside of dashboard, menu system, and menu structure than the physical panel menu. So then, of course, comes to multi-screen configuration being our last item, because layer mode again was on the primary screen. So down here we've got our dedicated multi-screen layout control. And so because there's only 2 mini MEs, the maximum number of multi-screens on a Carbonite Solo is 2. Now, of course, we have a multi-screen configuration and mini ME setup menu of the menu system and the structure and using it. We do have a dedicated video for that, which I recommend you watch. Same concepts. Again, this was just to get acclimated with getting started with our Carbonite Solo and understanding the premise of some of the features. So background DVEs, you're able to force the background DVEs. So when I do a dual horizontal, if I force this, it will now reserve the DVEs to my multi-screen and in the background. And so what that's doing now is now I've got video being stretched. When I take, say, a camera, it will zoom in and use the DVEs to do a multi-screen element. If with my inputs I create a substitution table, so maybe I have something like ProPresenter, which is giving me 2 outputs from a dual head to go, and now my 2 screens, when I take that source, it'll know to put output 1 to screen 1 and output 2 to screen 2, because we'll set that up in our substitution table. Which again, more in depth about substitution tables, more in depth about operation from the dedicated multi-screen video. If I don't want to use any DVEs in the background, if I'm always going to have something in the background and I'm going to say fly a DVE around using the keyer instead, one of the 2 key layers, then what I may decide to do is say, well, no, I want background DVEs to always be off, and then I'm always going to put my ProPresenter or media stores with full rastered pixel accurate, because I use 2 channels of media store to sub in, and that's going to be my background. Now I'm going to put a key layer on top. Well, then I can use background DVEs off and force it that way. If I don't want to do any multi-screen production at all, I would be in the off mode, or I'm picking one of 2 layouts, either 2 side by side or 2 vertical for how those are connected. So we'll say 2 side by side, and then in the middle here, this is where you have the ability to either have an overlap. So again, now these screens are overlapping, and you'll do edge blending and gamma correction inside of the projectors or scaling device, or bezel compensation. So here now I've got a bezel between, say, 2 monitors. We can adjust this value so that the bezel seems like it's intentionally almost like a picture frame. So when they move from screen to screen, there will be that gap in between where they disappear. So again, very easy to reset all that, and again, it'll all show up on your multi-viewer. Okay, for more use or information on how to use multi-screen, again, I highly recommend you watch the topic specifically on multi-screen. Okay, so from the switcher panel, that essentially sums up our system menu. If we move to the reference menu, this has a switcher-based reference menu that follows along with it. So here, we've got our video mode that we're operating in, and we have our reference source. So reference source, internal. Here, again, I could either switch between external or internal. I can also do it from here to external or to internal. You got your video modes, so all your different video standards and modes that you can operate in. So this includes all of our supported video standards and modes. Note that this is the operating mode of the switcher and what it's operating in. So that's the standard that it's producing in, which means that's what the outputs are going to be as well. If I've got inputs that I need to control frame sync, like the HDMI inputs or the SDI inputs, there are 6 of these frame syncs and you can float them to any input. So on the switcher panel or from the panel GUI, you select the frame sync that you want to control and you hit the select button, and then it'll show you what's currently on that frame sync. So is it on or is it off? And then what's on it. And then also how you do your framing. So obviously you have full access from the panel, but obviously using dashboard, much easier. So you can just click on, I want to enable it, it's in input mode, pick my physical input that I want to apply it to, and then adjust the framing mode. So here, if it's just frame syncing, then it doesn't apply, but if it's going to do a format conversion, it's going to auto detect, say that it's a SD source, then I'm saying either stretch it full, which if it's a 16:9 SD source, it'll look correct because the pixels need to be pulled wide. If it's a 4:3 source, I have 2 options with what I can do. I can zoom in on it, in which case it'll zoom in and it'll crop a bit off the top and a bit off the bottom. Or I can pillar box it, in which case it will keep it as its aspect, put in the pillar bars on the left and right, and give it to us blown up to the proper aspect and zoom in the middle. Again, you have to pick how it is you want to run your SD to HD up conversion for these items. So that's pretty much the basics of it. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to use the frame syncs. They just run, they're real easy. Okay, so that's your frame sync, and that's your reference menu. When we go to the config menu on the switcher, this is where we've got our inputs. Now this input menu maps directly to this input menu. So as we step through them, you have your mnemonic and then your alpha source. So I could select this, and now I can use these buttons and these buttons, right, to change characters, and then hit save to save that change. Plus you can come over and then adjust your mnemonic information. So of course, dashboard is much easier to use. So here you can see that my mnemonic is right here. So I can come in and go XPN1. Now obviously on a solo all-in-one, there are no mnemonics on the panel. However, in the menu system there's names, and in dashboard there is names. So it's nice to be able to come in, as well as these mnemonics is the same text that's going to be displayed on your multi-viewer. So this is where you change the names. So the left, or the physical input connector, we hard code that so you know what you've plugged into and it matches the input names. And then this is the text that we change for what we want to show up in the mnemonics. So here I can see it's set to large. Well, I can set it to medium, and I can set it to small. And you can see down on the virtual panel what the virtual mnemonic would look like as it changed. Now, this virtual mnemonic represents what a physical mnemonic. So if I connected a Carbonite Black 1 panel, our CB1 panel, those have mnemonics, and those can connect to any Carbonite Black panel for that matter can connect to a Carbonite Solo, as well as a Carbonite Solo frame only, so the CBF 109. You can connect one of those panels. So we're going to go with a medium mnemonic, and then I can change my color. So exactly like a real panel, changes the color. You also can assign your inverse, so whether you want the text inverted or not. So there we see the example of inverted text. Now your alpha source. Currently, if I had an expression, maybe I'd have another input, and it would be For now, let's just go with 1, 2, 3 like they're cameras. Let's say my expression is coming in on input 5, and input 6 is the alpha. So I'd set up my mnemonics, I see them nicely, and then this is where we would say this guy uses an alpha of this guy, and it's shaped. Now, it's shaped all depends on whether or not that device is outputting a shaped key. In the case of expression, the default is that it is outputting an external pre-multiplied shaped key. If it was an SD source, what is its aspect ratio? Is it 4:3 or is it 16:9? Because those aren't detectable. GPO, so configuring the GPO, and then also TSL, UMD, and TSL tally coming in from an external source. Now again, there's a lot more detail in the version 12 configuration on how to go through all of these elements. We're just trying to match where in the menus we'll see things. Now, there are internal sources, so your media stores, as well as all of your buses. You can name everything and set them up just like you can here. And then also substitution table. And again, with the substitution table, we recommend you look at the version 12 configuration video, as that video has a lot more in-depth information on all these elements. All right, so on our panel, you'll notice when we go into input, on the second page, again, input, SD aspect. Third page is device. So this is one element that has not been added in the dashboard UI yet, but this is where we go to select from those devices we created and attach them to an input, so that when I click on that input, the menu is going to follow along. So when I clicked on that, menu follow along to the device control, and now I get my device control for that expression. So again, very important. A whole thing on expression, whole thing on device controls, all in separate videos. This was all about just getting familiar with the menuing system. So in our config menu, in the input, alpha, aspect, device. If I set up an audio mixer, ONB96 or DM1000, this is also where I come in to tie those physical audio channels to the physical input channels and also their default levels. Inputs, we can attach GPOs and set pre-delays. So from the UI, same thing. What is the physical GPO? So which ones are available? And then what is the pre-delay that we can set? And then this will apply with roll clip. When that's enabled, it'll fire GPO1 and wait 7 frames before taking that source to air. So let's go ahead and show an example, since we'll jack it up to like 15 frames, whatever, 18. So with roll clip not enabled, it is going to cut instantly. We enable roll clip, and now when we go to take one to air, there is a 18 frame delay because it sends the GPO trigger, waits the duration, and then performs the transition. So from the menu, set it up. Substitution table, so that shows up here. Substitution table, again, view the video on multi-screen and mini-MEs, because that explains substitutions in detail. Your TSL input assignments. So again, picking your address, your TSL address that this input is supposed to track, and then whether or not tally is on or tally only. Tally only would be take the tally for this source but not the name. When it's on, this is going to take the name and the tally. And when it's off, it is going to take just the name. So that explains how the TSL tally function works. So that's your inputs and all of your associated menus. So as you can see, only a couple of menus that you have to come to the virtual menu for, or the physical panel menu, which include device assignment and the audio channel assignments. So we go back to the config menu. Now for our bus map, we just come to the bus map, select it here. You have your buttons, so button 1, the primary side, and then whatever's on the shifted side. So because we on button 16, we have a shift. So if we didn't have a shift, well, now I have no way to shift. So on button 16, we went all the way to shift, and now that it's shifted, all of our other buttons can have something on the shift side. And when I've assigned everything, come down, press the shift button, you can see how we've assigned the unshifted side and the shifted side. Pretty straightforward. Your GPIO, so that's also assignable right here. But essentially you're picking what each one does. They're all bidirectional. They can be either an input or an output. So you come in, you edit them. You pick either it's an out or it's an in. In the case of an out, you can set whether you want an edge or a level trigger, and then whether it goes low or it goes high, and then how long the duration is when it's an edge. When it's a level, you're picking whether it's high or low. You can use these as a tally-like device, so the GPO is on while that source is on air. When it goes off, it goes off. You are able to attach those as well and then set them up in the standard tally implementation rules. Now, one of the other things is if you look at it from an input standpoint, so if I want that to be a physical either contact or voltage coming into the switcher to trigger an event on the switcher. And so you have all kinds of events, custom controls, memory recalls, fade to black, ME cut, ME auto trans, key cut, key auto trans, and even an aux bus trigger. You may want to use GPIs to do CCU overrides from some camera shading stations for an aux bus that's feeding a waveform and monitor. Great use here so that you can set up a bunch of them and have 5 GPIs that all trigger camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, camera 4, camera 5 on an aux bus. Great. Come in, set them up on on aux 3, which is feeding the shader. I want camera 1. Done. So now I go to the next one. It's a GPI, aux crosspoint, aux 3, camera 2. And so now these ones will flip between those different sources. Pretty straightforward. Our physical tally assignments, so go in here. It's all here. And by default, we've got a default map set up here. They're all been removed. So we're just going to delete this, for example, and say, okay, I'm going to add a new rule. My new rule will be that tally 1 triggers when camera 1 is on air. And so we're going to go ahead and say, yep. So now we created that rule. And these are all rules. So you'll see I can, for tally 1, I can also have tally 1 trigger when, say, camera 1 is on Mini ME2. So now what you're seeing is we have multiple rules that we can define and assign per physical tally. So it's a very, very intuitive one-to-many, many-to-one system. You have your on-air. So on-air is referring to the fact that technically ME1 is my program ME. But if aux2 is feeding a projector and I make change sources on aux2 and I want to consider that always on air, because if a camera's in it, they need to know that they're tallied. Instead of having to set up multiple rules, I could have said, okay, well, anytime it's on air. So now, if on aux2 we take camera 1, it is going to tally as well, because we didn't say tally it when it's on program, we said tally it when it's on air. And ME1, which is our program ME, is also set to on. So again, very easy to set up and define quick on-the-fly rules as to our outputs always on air or always tallying. Your clock, so come in to set up your system clock. You can edit it, set up your hour, your minute, and your second, and when you're good with it, and then confirm. So a lot of times I set it about 20 seconds ahead, get to the confirm page, and then wait for my watch to say it's that second and go click. Done. And then finally, we have our multi-panel rules. So our multi-panel rules, this is where we have the master panel and 2 satellite panel slots. You can limit their control, what they have access to. So do they have access to the ME, to the mini MEs, to the multi-screen? And then that way you can make a satellite panel that just controls a mini ME, say that's feeding an onset screen or an IMAG screen. Or even cutting a totally separate sub-show. Hey, it can be done. In the panel itself is where you define what your master ID is. So what we mean by that, master or satellite ID, what we mean by that is with Carbonite Black panels, in dashboard, in their configuration, you're going to pick what slot it is that they're talking to the switcher on. If I put 2 on the same slot, they are basically going to get the same personality and they will have the same functionality being mimicked at the same time. Whereas if I put them in their own slots, then they have their own settings and their own thing, and they run solely with that. The soft panel, these virtual panels, they have a whole nother slot on their own, which doesn't show up here and you don't have to worry about it. That is the soft panel or dashboard panel, and so it automatically has its own slot as well. It's almost like a 4th panel. So that's your config menu. In your reset menu, this is where you're going to find things like our state loading, our state saving. Now on our switcher, if we go to Live Assist and we go into our memory area, we are going to find that same R state. So the R state, and if we default the R state, this will set everything to the way it would be from the factory in the R state. So the R state would be all the sources go to black, all the keyer sources go to black, keys turn off, key types all reset to auto select key. So if we load the R state, or if we were to do it from the panel by clicking on the knob called R state load, it will, as you can see, set everything back to black, everything goes back to black, keys all turn off, away they go. Now if I was to have set something on, say, an aux bus as a source, you'll notice when we do that R state load, the aux bus doesn't reset. And the reason for it not resetting is because you'll see that these elements are not enabled. Now if aux9 is lit up and we do that R state load, it of course will clear out. So in your setup and configuration, you can define which elements will recall and which ones won't, and then you can save that R state for those things to recall or not recall. So again, very straightforward. Also in the reset menu is the attributes. So again, same type thing, being able to pick, from your auxes, your media stores, which obviously here inside of dashboard makes it a lot easier because we can see everything all at once. You've also got the ability from the panel to clear all memories. So take every single one of your memories and clear them all out. So this will default them and erase all your memories. You can default the bus maps, go back to the default for bus maps, and you can factory reset. So you could reset the switcher to exactly how it would come out of the box from the factory and start from scratch. Now, when we have new software upgrades, we put that software upgrade on a USB in the root, and then we would be able to upgrade from USB. So click on the select to upgrade from USB, and then it's going to look at my USB, and then I can go into switcher directories on the USB if I wanted to. But eventually you're going to find that it will scroll, and here we can see CB Solo, the software version that we loaded. If there are multiples, you are going to find multiples as you would scroll through. If I wanted this, I would hit select, and then it's going to ask me confirm upgrade, and I'm going to cancel, so I'm going to click on this knob so that it doesn't do that. So we go back to the reset menu. As you can see, that was the last page. So again, very easy to do your software upgrade. Shove on the USB, plug it in, and away you go. In your user menu, this is where you'll find the live EDL menu, as well as color schemes for real panels, being able to define the color scheme for the real panel. Under personality, double press rate for the switcher, frame rate that it's running in, your editor is the editor port on or off, ME select button, do you hold or ME cell hold toggle, so follow. So again, this is whether or not these things will follow or not, and then your toggle and your toggle mode. Trans area, so functions in the next trans area, as well as the next back function button. So if you hold down the next button, you can have a function if it was running. So either GPOs, and now when you would hold this down, those would go to any GPOs that you had assigned to the button. Again, making it easy to trigger GPOs without having to use custom controls is essentially what that's for. Your transition area, this is where we've got the trans reset, the auto remove key on and off functionalities, how you halt with the ME auto trans or the key auto trans on a second press, recall roll clip, whether the user can toggle it on or off or forced on, and then background double press. So normally I have that as set to trans clear, and so what that does is if we double tap on the background button, it will automatically enable the background and all active keyers so that when I transition, I'll always go clean. So that's your transition area. Auto remove key, if you haven't seen this feature, I like it a lot. When it's enabled, so if we transition in and then we lose key 2, you'll notice that it'll automatically remove key 2 from the next transition area. However, let's say we transition off in this manner, right? And we put key 3 on, you'll notice it's only for going off air. And then that way, if we now hit key 3, it would remove it. That way you don't accidentally switch back and end up unclean. And then transition reset, really quick, if you have that enabled, say we did this type of a transition, upon transitioning, it will reset the next transition area to whatever was defined in your R state. So whatever your default is for your R state. So that's your trans area. Global memory undo. So if you're recalling from this global memory system, you can press the same button to undo if that is enabled. If it's off, then it'll just keep on recalling the same memory. So yeah, that's your personality menu. And then of course you have your save and loading, so that you can save and load to different memory setup files, and then load from those files. Note, because there's nothing stored yet, So if we come into save, we say, okay, well, let's store set 1, confirm saving. So it's saving everything. So now as it goes through and it stores everything for us, and we haven't built a custom control, so there is none, but say we came to the load side, now you'll notice only set 1 is available. So it'll only show you file sets that have been created. Now, we do have a couple of other videos completely regarding how to save, load, how to network in as well, so add it as a network location so that you can FTP from this computer running your dashboard client, and then you'd be able to move files back and forth from the frame or the solo, as well as you'd be able to rename or create folders for your show files so that they actually have a name other than otherwise it's a generic set name that we just create those folders. So again, go see those other videos. They're more targeted for that specific functionality. So this has been the walkthrough of the panel. I know it's been a long video. There's a lot of functionality, a lot of stuff that's new, and a lot of the rest of the functionality and features like Live Assist and how the menu follows along with the keys, that's all covered in other videos. How to use the buses menu, how to use the ME copy menu. All of these menus are covered more thoroughly. The custom control menu, so how to run your macros, so selecting your bank and you'll have access right here to run all your macros. How to use the editor to edit macros, again, we got some videos on that, make it a little bit more manageable. And of course the media manager and how to use the media manager with, for example, loading media stores into your media store channels. There's some internal samples, but then of course you'd want to be coming off of the switcher USB with your media items and how you managed it. All right, so essentially that's the quick runaround. I know it was long, apologize, but this is how the Carbonite Solo soft panel is going to look, how it's going to operate. And we're really happy with how it turned out, especially being able to, on a 1920 by 1080 monitor, touchscreen or not, be able to run the control surface as well as a full-size, fully featured dashboard menu display system simultaneously. So thanks again for watching these videos. We'll have more up as we progress, and as always, if there's some specific topic or item that you'd like us to cover, please send your emails to switchers@rossvideo.com, and we'll be able to put up videos reflecting your questions or requests as soon as possible. So thanks again for watching. Have a great day.